Okay, the next two principles, establish a change control process and agree on acceptance criteria, are really small. And they both really are part of the first one, define the job in detail. But they're so important that they require their own principle. So we've covered defining the job in detail, principle number 1. Principle number 2, getting the right resources involved. Principle number 3, breaking the job down. Principle number 4, estimating the time and cost. And principle number 5 that we're going to cover now is establish that change control process. Throughout the whole WordPress project management roadmap that I'm creating is the idea that you need to acknowledge change. Acknowledge with the client that you know that there's going to be change. You're not perfect. They're not perfect. There are going to be things you think of along the way. You know there's going to be change. There's two things that you do as a WordPress practitioner that you're telling the client that you do to control that. One is you do a really thorough job of defining the requirements on the front end. And we're going to go in much more detail of that in the roadmap of how you go about getting that done so that you know exactly what you need. You're ready to go when it's time to develop. The second thing you're going to do is you have, for those things that you don't catch on the front end, even though you're really, really good at it and you know you're not going to miss much, but you also know you're probably going to miss something, or the client's going to miss something, or somebody's just going to have a good idea. So in order to allow for that, you are putting in place a change control procedure that includes a change budget. So once you decide exactly how much this project's going to cost, let's just take a random number and say $5,000. Then you're going to decide to take a percentage of that $5,000 and put it in a change budget. Now that means your estimate is now no longer $5,000. Your estimate, let's just say that you're using 20%. Then that means that $1,000 would go into the change budget. Now this is different than a pad, because a pad is just that you come up with an estimate and then you say, okay, let's add 30% to it just in case there's some change. This is different because you're going to manage this change, you're going to look at the change, you're going to examine each change and determine whether you should use the change budget. But here's the key, you're not going to determine whether you use the change budget, the client's going to determine whether you use the change budget. And so that puts them in control of any change that comes along, and it's always tied to money. It might also be tied to time, but it's always tied to the money in that change budget, which is a completely separate bucket than the getting the project done as it is written up. So hopefully that makes sense. That's how you establish a change control plan. And in the complete WordPress project management roadmap, we'll go into a lot more detail. I can give you all the words and all the steps to put this in your documentation and use it with your clients. Okay, so the next principle we're going to cover is agreeing on acceptance criteria.